Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Alexander back with you. Jonathan Wilson is not with us tonight, but in his place we have again Josh Jacobs. How are you this evening, Josh?
I'm doing well, thanks, Mike.
All right, great. Glad you could join us this evening. I don't know what Jonathan's doing. Are they doing more basketball tonight or something like that?
Yeah, it's the Final Four, and so that's happening right now. Well, actually, I'm not sure if there's any games happening right now, but it was earlier today.
Yeah, good. I guess they still got that going, and I think Baylor took the women's championship or something like that. So everybody out there's having a good good time. And speaking of choice, we're going to be talking a lot about school choice tonight and its implications for us as a society, and also the deep, deep political implications of our current public school system. Now, if you'd like to be part of the program tonight, you can join us at area code 866-870-5752. 86, or you can call toll-free, 866-870-KRLA. We do not have our Facebook up and operating tonight, but we will be back on next week. And if you'd like to be connected with us, you can go to schoolchoice2020.org and sign up there and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem here. So in any event, I want to lead off tonight, just before I went on the air, somebody sent me an interesting link to an article that was on WorldNet Daily. And it's as revealing as anything could possibly be. And the thrust of the story was that parents have been identified at a school in Great Britain as the problem rather than the solution. And basically what has happened is that in the United Kingdom, just like here, they are very aggressively promoting an LGBTQ agenda in the schools, and when confronted with this by one of the Christian parents there, they replied to them very candidly that they thought that the parents as a group were part of the problem and not part of the solution, period. Now, isn't that the case? Yeah, of course we're the problem as parents. That is because we fail to recognize the schools are places of indoctrination and politicization rather than places of education. And in some of our schools, the only ABCs that they seem to teach are LGBTQ. That is the priority. Why in the world would this be a priority? And yet over there in Great Britain, as here, they are talking about a so-called sex education, which is basically sexual lobbying and coercion of children as young as 5. But we're seeing that. You remember last week we had Mark Ang, the Asian fellow who was kind enough to come on last week, and he talked about the textbooks that they're putting in there. And I think somebody picked him up. Lisa, thank you for dropping them by the offices. But I looked at one of them, and they got a little homosexual rabbit. And I can't remember what his name is, but he apparently has a love affair either with another male rabbit or a boy dog or some damn thing. I don't know what it is, but it's ridiculous. So they have these really beautifully drawn little cartoon characters, in a children's storybook. If you didn't read the text and just page through it, you would say, oh my gosh, what a beautifully illustrated book. And it is, but it's all put to harnessed in the service of nothing but pure evil, the attempt to sexualize these children. That's what they're doing. The topics that they talk about, if I were to have such a conversation with a young child on my own outside of a classroom, it would lead immediately to charges of sexually interfering with a minor. I'm telling you, you can't have these conversations. If this kind of conversation were to take place in the workplace, it would be the worst kind of harassment. But yet we drop our children off early in the morning, and we leave them there, and the teachers and the homosexual lobby go right to work on it. And by the way, it's not all homosexuals, of course, agree with this, or many of them who agree with us that such things have no place in the classrooms, and if anything, it's up to the parents.
It's the illiberal leftists is what it is.
That's correct.
Because the leftists are the ones that are doing this. They're the ones that don't want to give the parents the right to choose.
That's right.
All they claim, we're into choice, but oftentimes that's just narrowed to one particular topic.
Right.
But when it comes to school choice, they're against that. They're against the parents having the choice to opt the child out of a certain discussion if the parent doesn't want that to happen.
Correct.
I mean, the thing is that they're even doing this with religion. There was a case a couple weeks ago where in San Diego they were being indoctrinated with Buddhism, and it wasn't even an option because there's Buddhist clubs, Christian clubs, Jewish clubs on campus, and those are perfectly legal, and they should be able to have those but it's outside of the classroom. It's the student's choice whether they want to attend or not attend. But this was forced indoctrination of Buddhism, and San Diego's that school district area lost that case. The parents won, we the people won, saying, you can't force a child into Buddhism. A similar thing happened with Islam, and I forget what district that was in, but it was forced participation in Islam, but it wasn't a choice. It was like it wasn't like a cornucopia of religions. Okay, we're going to discuss different religions this week. It was just one particular choice, or not one particular choice.
And you certainly can't do a comparative religion class in grammar school or even for the most part in high school. Those kinds of topics almost universally are taught at the college level, by which time the student is mature and has had an opportunity to form, under parents' direction and the church's direction, his or her religious opinions and their values. From there, you're able to go on and study other religions profitably, and hopefully, if you have an excellent professor, you can understand the things religions have in common and those things that they don't, and why those differences exist. But certainly, the grammar schools are an inappropriate place for this to take place, and it's something else. So when we look at school choice, and you know that here on Radio Free Los Angeles, in addition to being the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government, we are increasingly here the voice of choice. Voice of choice in education, of course, those choices being exercised by the parents themselves. And that's why we advocate and are supporting the constitutional amendment here in the state of California through the initiative process to go on the ballot in November 2020 with your support. And we invite your support to go to schoolschoice2020.org. Go there, sign up, and give us a contribution to help make all of this possible. I'd like to lead off with a little bit of an essay that I'll do it in summary form based upon a talk that I gave yesterday. But, our current public school system is out of control. We talk about that all the time here. I'm sure that you out there in our audience have read about it and share our opinions. But if you don't, I would ask you to reflect on the 5 crises that is represented by our current public educational system, which is a state-owned and operated monopoly. That here in California, 5.5 million out of 6 million children are schooled by the state in a totalitarian atmosphere, and that has given rise to at least 5 crises. Now, the first of those crises, of course, is educational. We know that that the California schools, whatever they were at one point, are 48th in the nation. And statistically, there's no real difference between being 45th and 50th or 51st. Doesn't make any difference. Our schools are the worst in the country, bar none, and yet our state spending here under the California budget submitted by Gavin Newsom here late last year, that budget will forecast spending of over $17,000 per year per student, and the Prop 98 funds, that is the portion that of the state income revenues that is granted to it by Proposition 98 that was passed several years ago, that amount alone is north of $15,000 per year. And yet, despite all that money, our schools are 48th in the nation. And as a result, of course, just from an educational perspective, the students that we have in these schools simply cannot meet the intellectual challenges presented by government or by our complex economy of the 21st century. They simply can't get there. I know some people are going to call and tell me all the stories about all the great students. Of course, we have great students out there. Many of these kids would be fine all on their own if they never attended a day of school. We can always find those people, but across the board, we do not even deliver basic educational skills to our K through 12 students, despite spending record amounts of money here in the state of California. The educational crisis currently is severe. These schools, however, also present a moral crisis. We just discussed one such moral crisis, and that is the deliberate attempt on the part of the schools to undermine the parent-child relationship, to substitute the state and the government and the union representatives, the union employees, as parents. It is they who pretend or purport to teach our children what it is that they're supposed to know. They're supposed to know the difference between right and wrong. The government, we now learn these things from our government rather than from our parents and from our schools. This is an outrage, the attempt of the government to usurp the role of the parents and of the churches. The third crisis that is presented by public education system as we have it is cultural. And we have two or three different aspects of that. First of all, this system increasingly represents a complete rejection of the Judeo-Christian tradition that is the very foundation of American life, of American political life, of the whole American system. I won't go into the history of our country in that regard. It is well known to many of you, but our current public school system, with its totalitarian objectives, rejects the Judeo-Christian tradition, and in fact increasingly is hostile to all concepts of religion except those which actively undermine the Judeo-Christian tradition, such as Buddhism or Islam. In addition to that, of course, our current system is hostile to the whole idea of Western civilization. It rejects the very idea of America, constitutional government. You want to know what the school teachers think in our system? All you have to do is to listen to that bean brain Sanders. What's the jerk's first name?
Bernie?
Bernie, yeah, Bernie Sanders.
I want to give a Kentucky Fried Chicken every plot. That's right. I'm Larry David.
Yeah, that's him. I'm telling you, this guy is nuts. And he goes off on racism. He complains about the founding. The schools, the public employee unions are there with him.
Yeah, Bernie himself has 3 houses.
Hang on. Let me finish my little mini essay here, because I want to form the basis for our discussions. The fourth crisis represented by our current school system is economic. And this expresses itself in two important ways. Number one, we're not educating our future citizens in the way that we need to so that they can be full, productive, tax-paying participants in our economy. Worse yet, the system as we're running it is increasingly bankrupt. Despite all the money that has been spent on the schools, despite record budgetary, I wouldn't say surpluses, but increases because of, at least in the last few years, the Trump economy has boosted profits here in the state of California. We defy what happens in the rest of the world many times. The state is taking in more revenues, and as the state takes in more revenues, the school system takes in more revenues. Despite all that, they still have yet to bring their pensions up to date. They, at least in the opinion of many, don't pay their teachers enough. I would disagree with that, but many of them don't disagree. This represents an economic crisis. And finally, and this is as important as anything else, the current education system represents a political crisis. And if we stop to look at what we have right now, I don't care what you think about public schools when you were growing up in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or even the 80s. But certainly the schools that we have right now can be regarded as little else, nothing less than a political project of the Democrat Party, and increasingly even of the Republican Party. That is, those Republicans who refuse to hold the system to account. They themselves must be held accountable for failing to hold the system accountable. It is a political project, and I've heard it argued both ways. I've heard it argued that the schools are nothing less than a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democrat Party. I think it's actually the reverse. I think that the Democrat Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the California Teachers Association and the public employee unions here in the state. It is a political project, and it's designed to brainwash and indoctrinate our young children into believing in the essential goodness of government. These people have taken these students, and they want them to vote one way in the future, and that is for bigger government. And no matter what, government grows itself. And each and every one of those employees, including each and every teacher, is a paid partisan political activist. The schools are nothing more than a get-out-the-vote project for big government, no matter what party is pushing it, and we must work to end that now. And the only real solution is school choice. That is, the choice of where to send these children must be returned to the parents themselves, and that's why we will be sponsoring a school choice initiative for the 2020 ballot that will have the following features. Once passed, the state of California will establish an educational savings account for each K-12 student. Number two, into that account will be regularly deposited an annual amount equal to the average amount being spent on each student here in the state of California. That amount of money right now is somewhere between $15,000 and $17,000. It just depends upon how you count it. We have that under constitutional review to make sure we can define it precisely. But it's at least $15,000 that is currently being spent per student. And with all the other cash flows in the state from grants, local special taxes and whatnot, the number quickly rises. Number three, that the parents can take that money and they can spend it for education only, no other purpose, at a school of their choice, whether it's a public school, a charter school, an accredited private school, or trigger warning, grab your therapy dogs, or a parochial school that's accredited. And here's the key feature, the most important feature of all. Number four, whatever they don't spend on education, they will be able to save and use for other approved educational expenses or college. That the savings feature here is why we call it an educational savings account, and this makes the consumer, the parents, not only puts them in control of education, but makes them real consumers, because now they can compare one product with another to get the best price, and they have an incentive to do so, an incentive that they would not otherwise have, and of course a choice that they currently don't have at all. This is so important, and to do that, ladies and gentlemen, is simply the most important thing that we can do here in our state in the coming years. It is not only a very important thing, it is not only the most important thing that conservatives should be doing in the coming year and a half. In fact, I submit to you that it is the only thing that we conservatives should be doing, and we should put partisan politics in a far distant second position and focus on reaching out to the people in our neighborhoods and in our counties and in our parties to help save the future generation. And this issue of school choice transcends party, ethnicity, denomination differences, sexual orientation, you name it. This is a universal. This project has universal appeal, and I think that you'll find the people want it. Now, we'd love to hear from you at 866-870-5752, but I think Josh had a comment or 12 to make as well.
Oh, gosh, where we begin? I'd mentioned, something about Bernie Sanders and having 3 homes, one worth $600,000 a lakefront in Vermont, yet he's talking about spreading the wealth around.
Right.
How many people are invited to Weekend at Bernie's in the lake right there? But also, it's interesting you mentioned that schools, unfortunately, teach kids what to think rather than how to think.
Right.
I mean, I want kids to be able to make the argument, okay, you like President Trump, tell us why. Yeah. Give me a good argument. Or you don't like President Trump, give me a good argument why you don't like him.
Right.
I don't care as a teacher whether you do or don't like a certain president. Just at least give me the reason why you think that president is good or not good, or maybe somewhere in between. Maybe you like what they're doing here, but not like what they're doing there.
Do you have children? Any that you know of, that is?
No.
All right, good. All right, good answer. All right. Yeah. As far as education, schooling is concerned, I quite agree with you, particularly in high school. That's where you want to start teaching critical thinking, maybe even in junior high. But for a large part of grammar school and high school, the reason why many of us parents send our children there is because we know that there are many things that they absolutely need to know. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to know how to read. They're going to have to know how to write. And frankly, parental authority is a sufficient reason to do it.
Yeah.
And we send them there. Many of us who send our children to religious schools send them there to become imbued with our religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, or, some parents would choose to send their children to Islamic schools for their own moral formation. Those things are all fine. What we don't want is the government itself, with all of its power and all of its coercive capabilities, seizing our money, seizing our children, and then telling these children how to think about us, the parents. Persuading the children. I mean, the story from England says it all. They think that the children that the parents are the problem. This is what they teach there. Everybody is just absolutely out of their minds on this issue. How many minutes do we have in there?
That means we should kick out all the school board members, because a lot of those parents probably elected those school board members. So the parents are the problem. We should probably get rid of those school board members, because we should have somebody else. Because
just between me and you, I wouldn't spend 5 minutes on the school board. It's a total waste of space. it's an even greater waste of money. And talking with those idiots is a total waste of time. I've got Stephen on line one. Stephen, we're on break, but when we get back, we'll take you. He'd like to talk about school choice, I think. And meanwhile, it's been a quick half hour. This is Mike Alexander, and this evening, Josh Jacobs, my good friend for many years here, at 866-870-5752. We'll be back with you after the break.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, you bet it is Mike Alexander, but no Jonathan Wilson. I've got Josh Jacobs here with me tonight.
Hi.
Sitting in. How are you, Josh?
Doing well, Mike.
All
Thanks.
right, we're back here after the half hour here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. And I want to acknowledge Jeff on the board in there. He's in there in his Trayvon hoodie in there. Is it cold in there? All right, good. And Brooks out there somewhere answering the phone.
I thought it was a Fletch hoodie.
It is, man. Tell you what. Well, there goes Brooke. She's headed back to the phones right now. And you can call us to be part of the show at 866-870-5752. We love to hear from you. And right now we have on line one, Stephen from San Diego. How are you this evening, Stephen?
Well, I'm great. I'm the Stephen that you do know.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're calling me from San Diego.
America's
I'm
finest
20
city.
miles from that big, beautiful wall.
It's a great, big, beautiful wall.
And guess what? It
What?
actually works in San Diego.
Right. Well, my son, one of my sons sent me a picture of the Chinese wall. And he said the Chinese built that wall 2,000 years ago, and they still don't have any Mexicans there. So he said, walls work, he says. All right. Hey, don't call me because I don't care. All right. Fire away, Steve. What did you have to say this evening?
Well, I wanted, first of all, to say that I'm carrying the message of School Choice 2020
Yeah.
to the county Republicans of San Diego tomorrow night.
All right.
Spreading the message.
Great. Steve, you and I have talked a lot about this issue, and Steve has agreed to take up a significant part of the burden here of communicating on school choice. We really appreciate it. And one of the things that a lot of us talk about as Republicans is the future of the party. From your perspective, Steve, how do you see school choice in relation to the future of the Republican Party?
Well, there's the old story. Remember Benjamin Franklin when asked, what kind of government did you give us? And he said, a republic if you can keep it.
Yes.
And if we can keep school choice as one of the messages on the platform of the California State Party, I think we have a winning answer. Because I even know liberal Democrats that want their kids in private schools.
That's right. And many of them do send their kids to private school, and they're not all hypocrites. A lot of them do that, but they just never think about how about the opportunities that others might need to have within the system. And, of course, many of them are very secular in their outlook. Have you had a chance to talk with any Republicans about this, Steve?
Well, tomorrow, if I'm fortunate, I'll be speaking to the new head of the state party for a few minutes and handing him one of our flyers.
Good. Her.
Yeah.
Jessica Patterson is her name, and she's the first female and the first Latina California GOP chair.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I have low confidence in them, as you know.
You know my experience.
I do, yes. And by the way, it's not because I'm not because I'm antipathetic to them. for any reason, but they just don't seem to get it. I mean, the state party is in a terrible state of disarray. I spoke to a small group in El Monte, the El Monte Central Committee, there on Saturday morning. And a few of them showed up that are still alive, but mostly it looked like the pre-need room at Forest Lawn, you know. They had a few rolled in there on stretchers, with embalming needles in their arms. They had enough energy left to eat breakfast, and that was about it. And I think the school choice is the ticket. And why? Because this enables, Republicans and conservatives to reach out to these neighborhoods and on issues, on principle, rather than on party. And if we can expose them to our message, that is that we do care about them, we do care about their future, maybe they can get past the bias and prejudice that has been instilled in them. Guess where? In the public schools.
Yes. I think you'll find, at least my experience so far with the Republican Central Committee people here in San Diego, they are incredibly enthusiastic bunch, and they're looking for things to do. So over time, I am very hopeful. I called you because I heard a different argument for school choice this morning, and I would be curious about your take on it.
All right.
And it has to do with the usurpation of power of attorney. In fact, what happens, they make the decision for you where your children go to school, what teachers they have.
Right.
And they're doing that without your permission. And now in the state of California, they're going to be doing the same thing on health care. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think you're quite right, Steve. I mean, this is, if you want to know what the face of totalitarianism is, it's the schools. And the socialists here in the last 100 years have expanded their enterprise in two important areas. They have socialized the schools. When I say socialized, that is subordinated everything that goes on in these institutions to the total socialist enterprise. The second place that they've socialized has been the place of employment. So they've gradually dominated those two areas, and they become the principal delivery point for socialism and for socialized medicine, for socialized everything. They just can't control the outcomes in the future if they do not first control the students. And, so whoever that was, whether it was you or your correspondent over there, that guy is exactly right. And
it's actually Wilkow, if you know him. He's syndicated on Sirius Radio.
Oh yeah, very good guy. And all we have to do, I'll be reading here from quotations from the California Democrat Party. That is some of the early founders of the California Democrat Party. Here a little bit later in the show, you'll get a chuckle out of some of it when I do. But Steve, I want to thank you for being down there in San Diego. Say hello to all those Republicans for me, and let them know that this is the future. It's not just an important thing. It is not the most important thing for them to do. It is the only thing that Republicans should be doing in the next election cycle, is finding a way to raise the issues on school choice and to get it passed.
Well, I have to say that I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and this is the battle of our times. And it's time we cast off, as Thomas Paine said, those sunshine patriots, and it's time for anyone listening here to consider getting on the front lines, even if it's only on a small way of $5 a month.
You got it, man. Thanks, Steve. Give my regards to your lovely wife, and I look forward to talking with you when you get back.
All right. You take care.
Thanks, sir. Take care. Next, we have Mike from Van Nuys. How are you this evening, Mike?
Michael? Yes. Do you remember that Supreme Court decision, Plyler versus Doe? It was, I think, in Texas, where that determined whether or not we had to educate people here illegally or not. It was a 5-4 decision.
Yes.
And if somebody had standing, part of that decision was if you could show enough damages, they would return it back the way it was before. And certainly LA Unified can show damages.
Well, yeah, they could. Yeah, the problem is that is a difference of perspective. Now, in that case, it articulated at least their interpretation of our Constitution, but it also articulated a very broad-based humanitarian condition. Principle, and that is youngsters must be educated. In my own particular case here, I've gone on the assumption, Mike, that at least for the time being, we have these very large numbers of children who are here, and you and I have no control over whether how they get here or how long they stay here. But what we can do is influence the ideas that they consume and ensure that if they are American citizens, just by virtue of having plopped on American soil or have received amnesty, whatever it is, if they're here, we need to educate them, but we need to tell them the truth about America, and we need to empower the parents. We need to make sure that they have the skills that they need educationally to participate fully in the economy of the future and participate fully in our democracy, our Republican, Democratic Republic here. I think it's essential. What's your sense of that, Mike?
Well, I think what you're suggesting is a long way.
The wrong way or the long way?
No, long.
Okay.
L-O-N-G.
All right.
Because you're making some assumptions that that'll take place. There's nothing that guarantees us to do that. I think that if we could get to the point where somebody of standing could challenge them and show the huge damages. I mean, we displaced something like 1 million students in LA Unified that went to private schools.
Right.
It was terrible shift in education.
Well, let's hold. Oh, hang on there. Just give you a little bit of data, and this is not to reject your broader argument, but the data showed that in the whole state of California, there are about 6 million K through 12 age students, and there's only about 500,000 in the total private system in the whole state. And that, too, is part of the problem because of the rising taxes and the increasing spending on public schools. Parents, especially parents of school-aged children, who are going to be between, 18 and 30, 35, right in there, 40, they're not making enough money to send their kids to private schools. That's the problem.
I'm just wondering, there's only 500,000 kids going to private school in the state?
That's correct. Yeah, that's a state. And by the way, I've had to spend quite a bit of time on this. I was, I don't know whether I can say I was surprised or not, but I might have thought that it was a little larger number. Go ahead.
I thought it was way larger than that.
Yeah.
How many of those are homeschooled?
Homeschool. I don't know the number on homeschoolers, but I doubt that if it's over 50,000.
Yeah.
And that 500,000, Mike, does not include charter schools.
If you go back to, say, 1960,
yes,
I think it was like $85 to go to Cal Berkeley. It was, the streets were great. We used to spend something like 25% of our GDP on infrastructure. Right. Now it says in the law it's got to be 1.5%.
Right, yeah. It's outrageous. These schools. Now, let's come back. Is this the first time you called in, Mike?
Second, I think.
Second time. Okay, great. You and I thought you and I might have talked once before.
Yeah.
So you've heard me talk about this. We can't really understand anything about the schools or about government if we don't understand that it's a business. Now, it's not a business that you and I would recognize, but this business called government is the largest, most profitable business in the United States, and it has over 50% market share, doesn't it? That's what it takes.
Interesting way of putting it.
Right. Okay. So their job and their business is the same as yours and mine, Mike, and that is to grow that business as much as they can. These guys go out there complaining about all this. Say, the reason we can't teach is because we got all these illegals, so forth and so on. Mike. They want them here. That's cash flow. Here in the United States, our birth rate has been falling because of contraception and because of abortion. Regular old Americans of whatever race, we're just not having enough children. The birth rates are falling. And you will remember in the 1970s and early 80s, we were closing public schools here. We had gotten past the baby boom. There was that gap waiting for the next generation to have children. In the meanwhile, these people needed cash flow. And the illegals, the vast numbers of illegal immigration into this country were designed to ramp up cash flow. Do not think about it. Anybody out there, please do not think about it any other way. Yeah, I know it's all about electing Democrats in the future, yada, yada, yada. But first and foremost, it's about the cash flow. These people embrace the Democrat Party because they're willing to grow government without restriction. You see what I mean?
But then we passed, Prop B? We're going to build 600 schools. And we went from 756,000 students in LA Unified down to under 600,000.
That's right. Yeah, in the LAUSD is right now in free fall. Its student population is declining. Its revenues are declining. One of the reasons, of course, is because the cities themselves are run by Democrats and left-wingers and feckless Republicans, and as a result, the cost of living in Los Angeles is rising, and these same people who flooded into the cities are flooding back out to cheaper areas of the county and other school districts.
Mike, isn't the Hispanic birth rate going down?
Among second
in the United States.
No, second and third generation so-called Hispanic or Latino birth rates, the data that I've seen suggests that they become more like their gringo Anglo brothers and sisters, because as they're here longer, especially if they get an education, they become more affluent and they intermarry more freely and more often. They tend to move in the same economic circles, and because the Latinos tend to be conservative, their patterns tend to repeat. But Latino families, particularly because they tend to be Catholic, tend to have more children. They're very, very pro-family. So they are. But the most prolific families are, of course, the newly arrived, because each one of those children represents cash flow to that family, too, doesn't it?
And that's, again, how they fund the schools.
That's right. That's right. It's a cat-rat fact. This is basic numbers. It's basic numbers. And then you take all these students, and then you make it economic through high taxation, through regulation, which raises the cost of housing. You make it impossible for people to have any money, enough money left over to send their kids to private school, so they stay in your school. And now, because of Proposition 98, they control over 40% of the revenue coming into the state of California. And right now, that is over $80 billion per year. So if you think that they don't like Trump and are willing to do anything to get rid of him, you name the other person. You think that they don't like them. You think they don't like Pence. You think they don't like his Supreme Court nominees. I'm telling you, what has happened to Trump and what is continuing to happen to Trump is child's play compared to what's coming our way, Mike. Because we're threatening to take the children away. You realize that we lost the battle against socialism 100 years ago when we gave the government our children and our money. You realize that, don't you? That's when this problem started. It's not recent.
You could see it going back into the 40s and 50s.
That's right. And so we have to reverse this, and this idea of controlling the children, controlling the money related to the children, permits them to do everything else that they desire to do. This is the key to their future.
What is the budget now?
The budget is upwards of $200 billion here in the state of California. And the education, 40% of that is about $80 billion. So there you go. Maybe Josh can Weasel or Google, whatever it is that you use, California state budget for 19-20 or 20-21. They've got them out there coming up, but it's very, very large. And that doesn't include, Mike, the value of these bonds, and the amount of money that they've come up with for so-called education is still short of the amount of money that it's going to take to bring those pensions up to where they are fully funded. They're not within a million miles. The teachers' pensions are probably underfunded all on their own, $250 billion. You see what I mean? We can't get there from here. It's essential from a budgetary perspective, cultural, moral, legal, you name it. We have to get our children out of those systems. We must break the government monopoly on the schools, period. We fix that, everything gets fixed. Yes?
Congratulations. You do good work.
Hey, well, thank you, Mike. It's all to you. And, what you can do to help, and I'm going to talk about how we get school choice on the ballot here. We need people to go to schoolchoice2020.org. Go on there, sign up for a monthly contribution, $5, $10, $20 a month, or more if you like. Boing! I scared him. Hey, I think we lost our phone signals there. Hey, Brooke, I was going to pay you, really. Okay, so, I don't know. Was there something that I said, Brooke? Brooke's our call screener. I think we lost our phone.
I have $1 in my wallet, so...
Okay, all right. At any rate, okay, well, Mike, I want to thank you for calling there. So if it sounds like I hung up, believe me, we didn't out there. So, this really gets us into it. And Josh, we were, how many more minutes we got in there? 2 or 3? We got 3 minutes. Let's get this discussion started. As you know, I don't do a lot of Republican politics on here, and I'm going to talk about the Republican Party here quite a bit. Not because that's what I want this program to be about, because as you guys out there know, I have a very, very low opinion of both parties, and that includes the Republican Party. I don't think they've been a solution to anything. They really need to turn this around, because we need, at the very least, we need some competition in this state. But the competition should not embrace the dark side. It should embrace real principles. And if I were in charge of the Republican Party, or one of the many of you who sit on central committees, and I was sitting around confronted with this fact, I'd bear all these things in mind. Number one, there's still about 4 million registered Republicans in this state. That's no small number. I know there's a lot more Democrats, but 4 million people is a lot of people. Plus, there's another 1 million or 2 that call themselves independents that think like we do and vote like we do. A lot. That's a lot of people. Number 2 is that if you have paused to listen and pay attention to one single thing that I've told you that our current, maybe this will help you out there, Republicans, wake up for a second and listen. Would it help you if I identified the school system as a Democrat Party school? Because that's what it is. And all of you Republicans out there that run scared as city council, school boards, assembly, state senate, Congress, everybody runs scared out there because you don't want to offend the teachers union. I'll tell you this, if there's any mistake that the Republican Party has made since Richard Nixon, it has been the uncritical, and I emphasize the word uncritical, the uncritical support of public schools and the uncritical support of public safety, cops and firemen. And I'll tell you why that is the case when we come back after the 9 o'clock hour. This is Mike Alexander and Josh Jacobs here, Radio Free Los Angeles. Call in after the 9 o'clock break. Be part of the program, and at the end we'll have our widely praised and acclaimed Government Grifter of the Week. Back with you.
This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, all you rebels out there, we're here for our last half hour of Radio Free Los Angeles. Mike Alexander here, and also my good friend Josh Jacobs. Josh, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, Jonathan Wilson is off tonight. I don't know whether he's in watching basketball at some bar in rehab or trying to make bail. But at any rate, I think
he's probably eating a bunch of buffalo wings right now and some nachos, maybe a little bit of celery to offset all those nachos and all that sodium. Of course, celery does have natural salt, so...
he did. Shouted Jack, and I think and he mentioned something about those some cigars that I had given him. So at any rate, I've got a big bad case of Jonathan envy right now wherever he is. So
and I'm sorry, Des Prager's in the studio usually, but there's no cigars behind in that closet. I think I've looked.
Oh, does he keep them back there?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, all right.
but I don't know. Maybe he does. You never know.
I'll trade him some. So, at any rate, hey, if you'd like to be part, the lines are wide open. If you'd like to be part of the program, you can reach us here at 866-870-5752, Radio Free Los Angeles. And don't forget, this is citizen-sponsored radio. We need your support to help us defray everything that we do here. And there's a couple places that you can go. Ultimately, the money goes for the same purposes here. You go to radiofreelosangeles.net, sign up there. Get our newsletters, get our podcasts. You can go to schoolchoice2020.org and sign up there as well. Get our information. Get connected with us. Get committed financially. Keep the show on the air. Help us do what we're doing. And then finally, get others to do the same. Because believe me, the Republican Party's not going to do this for us. The Democrat Party sure as hell isn't going to do it for us. The teachers aren't going to do it. It is only we, the citizens, we, the families, those of us who sit in the pews and parishes and want better for our children and want better for other people's children. Now, bear in mind, all of my children are grown, but that doesn't mean that you and I, as older citizens, don't have a tremendous investment in the future of this country. Much is at stake. The entire future of the country is at stake. And ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to continue my message to the Republican Party, and I want you to bear this in mind, and the Republican so-called party, if that's what they are these days, needs to bear it in mind. And those are the results of a recent Harris poll. Took place about a month ago. And they went about the United States and they asked people, hey, do you generally regard yourself as more conservative or more liberal? There were only 5 states where liberals dominated, answered in the affirmative. And California was not one of them.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. So in this state, they asked the same question, and the number of people who replied that they were conservative was 29%. Now, what do you suppose the percentage of the population, voting population, who replied that they were more liberal than conservative? What percentage do you think it was?
I actually read this article. I think it was 29%.
29%, an even break, right?
Yeah.
So you see, California is nowhere as irredeemably blue or whatever these conventions are as people want you to think. It's just not so. What we have is a party that collapsed. But more than anything, what we have here in this state is a Democrat Party that controls all the schools, it controls the unions, and it has a revenue model that can't be beat because of those union dues that go into the system, and those union dues are over $1 billion a year. Bottom line, Democrats who are heavily invested in the system, and they're overwhelmingly public employees here that are doing this, Democrats are invested, and they invest in their future. They put money in their future. Conservatives and Republicans not only don't put the money in there, they don't even have a revenue model that understands this. If they just pay attention, I keep explaining it to them, but, these are the kids that arrive at school on the short bus. They're now in charge of the Republican Party. These guys don't get it, believe me.
And even the national talk show hosts are saying California is a lost cause.
It's
California
not.
is hopeless. It's like, don't listen to them.
No,
listen
not,
to them,
no.
but, don't listen to that thing. That's baloney because, as you said, the thing is that the California Republican Party, in my opinion, we were talking about this off the air.
Yeah.
They're like the Dumb Football Coaches of the Week award.
Yeah.
They're basically trying to maintain what they have rather than going out and reaching out to people who've not been reached. They're just trying to maintain what they have.
And now
but then
they don't
they're
have
losing.
anything.
It's like the Super Bowl in 2017. The New England Patriots were down 28-3 versus Atlanta. And Atlanta should have won that, but instead of continuing to be aggressive, Atlanta just try to maintain the lead, and New England came right after them, and they won the game 31-28.
Never sit on a lead because it's a delusion. And here in the state of California, I don't know if we ever did. But let me go back to the Republican Party and finish out that argument here. Why, Republicans, would you support anybody uncritically who doesn't support you? And yet for the last 40 years, you can go out and listen to any Republican talk anytime, and he'll always say, yeah, we need more money for schools. Oh, yeah, we need more money for cops, law and order, and firemen. And those people in the teachers union are voting against you. 98% of their money goes to people in the other party. And over on the cop side, even though there may be more conservatives among cops, their unions are not conservative. Not by any means. All of that money goes to your opposition. And in the meanwhile, you Republicans who pretend to be the fiscal conservatives have presided over a fiscal disaster. There's nothing conservative about the way that we've managed our schools. There's nothing conservative about the way that we've managed police and fire. These people make far more money than anybody else in the country doing comparable jobs. It is a runaway system, and now we have a trillion to $1.5 trillion dollar pension underfunding issue here in the state of California, and those pensions can't be paid, and they're not going to be paid. And yet all you Republicans, who are hunkered down in the bunker, wetting your pants, afraid to speak the truth, let me tell you, they're running over you. You're dead anyway. You might as well fight. You might as well pay attention to what we're trying to say, and you might as well embrace the future. Right now, everything that I've described to you is failure. It's the past. Why would you embrace that? Why would you try to reclaim that, improve that you're more pro-education than they are? That is, you're going to continue to give them more money but never exact any control. It's pure insanity.
And those union bosses They're
Yeah.
making $1 million a year. So they accuse Republicans of being greedy. Oh, these rich, greedy white people, yet they themselves are making all this money. It's like, how
Of
much
course.
of that salary are they making? Are they actually giving to charity? I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, I would hope some of it, but it doesn't make any difference. They know that the Republicans are tame, and all you have to do is yell at them. Look at all these weaklings that we have in Washington right now. We have a handful of Republican congressmen plus Donald Trump standing up to the left, and we've still got an ongoing coup trying to get rid of him. We have to stop this, and we're not going to change anything in this country, ladies and gentlemen, until we get our children back. Believe me, we can't hope to take back our country and restore liberty if we do not first take control of our children's bodies, their minds, their hearts, and their souls. Families must reclaim them, and I don't care if most of those families are Latino. I will put my confidence in them over the Republican Party or any school board, certainly any so-called self-identified teacher. In this state. The whole thing is a system of child abuse. We have to change it. We have to change it now. And this issue is caught up with everything else. So for all of you out there say, oh, Mike, God, so get off of this school choice. Can we go back to talking about Republican gossip or something like that, or talk about Trump? There's enough people doing that. I'm trying to tell you, how come Trump's under fire right now? And it all starts at the local level. It all starts with local politics. It all starts off with the local public employee unions. They are the source of trouble in this country. And right now, Adam Schiff does what he does because of the public employee unions and Democrat powers right here in Glendale, right where we sit. It's the people here who put him back there. Adam Schiff does what he does, not because he's a left-wing nutcase. He does it because he can. And the reason that he can is because of the public employee unions and the other brain-dead Democrats who vote for him because he's got a D behind his name and we don't have any offense. Why don't we just go out there and take our kids back and take our money back? What's so damn hard about that? And I challenge you, Republicans, particularly those of you that think you know something about politics. Take a few minutes, talk with the people that you see in your businesses. Talk with the young girls out there in the reception area at the doctor's offices that you go to. Talk with the young people in the who are checking you out at the grocery store. Talk to the FedEx man. Or the DHL guy that comes in. Ask him what he thinks. Ask him how he's doing with his kids. Ask him if he feels that his kids are safe. Ask him if he agrees with what these kids are being told. Ask your Mexican mechanic. See what he says. Talk to them for a change instead of talking with each other and coming at me, with that same Republican blather that I hear every place I go and I speak frequently. Can we just do something different, team?
I mean, Dennis Prager put it best. He says, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
That's right.
And I want to add to that. The bigger the business, the smaller the employee. And the thing is that the unions are big business.
Huge.
And the union members oftentimes get messed up by even their own union. I mean, think about this. When teachers go out on strike, they're losing their own money, right?
Yes.
So why isn't the union helping these teachers out to supplement them while they're on strike? Because the unions have tons of money. Instead, they're giving it to politicians. They're not even helping the teachers. That money, those dues are going mostly to politicians rather than in
the last go around. What they did was to here in L.A. They got the 6% that was already baked in, and it was always going to be that. They went through the phony baloney routine of a fake negotiation. But when the dust settled, what it was really all about was getting rid of getting rid of charter schools, and they added like an additional 50 or 100 or 150 employees in LAUSD. In other words, the unions make sure that they were going to pick up some more revenue each year, another $150,000 in dues. That's what they do. They're outrageous. So, at any rate, we've talked a lot here tonight. If somebody would like to call in and disagree or offer their own perspective, we can be reached at 866-870-5752. We got about another 5 minutes here, or 3 or 4 minutes, before we take up our Government Grifter of the Week award. We have Juan Tierra is called in. He's on standby here, so we'll do that here in a few minutes. But while we're waiting for somebody, I'd like to read you some quotations for some of the early founders of the California Teachers Union here, and you'll like this one. It's we have a number of them here. It is the absolute right of the state to supervise the formation of public opinion. Think of the press as a great keyboard on which the government can play. All right, that's one of the founders of the California Democratic Party. His name was Joseph Goebbels.
Sounds like a communist to me.
Yes, right. And when an opponent declares, "I will not come over to your side," I calmly say, "Your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, will now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." That, of course, would be one of the early community organizers of the Democrat Party, Adolf Hitler, who also said, "The youth of today is ever the people of tomorrow. For this reason, we have set before ourselves the task of inoculating our youth with the spirit of this community of the people at a very early age, at an age when human beings are still unperverted and therefore unspoiled. This Reich stands, and it is building itself up for the future upon its youth. And this new Reich will give its youth to no one, but will itself take youth and give to youth its own education and its own upbringing." All right, so there's a voice of Adolf Hitler, but it really isn't the voice of Adolf Hitler so much as it is the voice of socialism and totalitarianism, the same kind of thing that we're facing here each and every. Hey, I got 7 minutes to go. Hey, Mike, can you be really good in about 2 minutes, my friend? 2 to 2.5 minutes? Mike on line 1, can you be really good in 2.5 minutes?
Fire unions that they give to the most left-wing radical Democrat politicians. And as an example, the El Segundo Firefighters Association contributed money to Maxine Waters, who's an outright communist. She once threatened in Congress during congressional hearings to nationalize the country's oil companies and have the government run them, only she forgot the word nationalize, so she said she threatened to socialize them. And then also, Ted Lieu's another one, a radical leftist, anti-American Democrat. And he has been endorsed and supported by the El Segundo Police Officer Association, which is just the police union, the El Segundo Firefighters Association, which is just, again, the fire union, and also by the Redondo Beach and Torrance City, as I recall, Police Officer Associations and Firefighter Associations are unions.
Right.
And whenever you get something in the mail asking for money from the Police Officer Association or Firefighters Association, don't ever give any money, because that money is going to be used against you, or at least some of it is going to be used against you, maybe even all of it.
That's right. Mike, as usual, you're right spot on. Mike, of course, is a former city councilman in El Segundo. He knows this stuff cold. Thanks for being on the show again tonight, Mike. Have a great rest of the weekend. And now, music. Maestro, please.
And now, from Southern California, it's the Government Grifter Award.
All right, now we have Juan Tierra, special guest nomination. Are you out there, John?
I certainly am, Mike.
All right, fine. We're playing the music for you. Who are your nominees for this week?
Well, Mike, tonight we shine the spotlight on the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
Oh, always rich.
Always a rich environment to
Yes.
highlight profligate government spending.
Yes.
As usually our source is transparentcalifornia.com.
Yes.
For fiscal year 2016, Santa Monica, a city of about 95,000 people, had 105 employees making over $300,000 a year. But wait, our three nominees all made more than $400,000 a year. As much as the President of the United States makes that, right?
Yes.
First nominee, police chief. $478,000, the highest paid police chief in the state.
Amazing.
Second nominee, the deputy police chief. $455,914, highest paid deputy in the state. And
Wow.
third, a police sergeant who racked in $475,546, the highest paid sergeant in the state.
Amazing.
I mean, now, is it any wonder who wins the prize?
No.
The sergeant.
Yeah.
Made about $475,000, $20,000 more than his own deputy police chief, and only $3,000 less than the police chief.
All right.
That's a government grifter.
All right. So we kind of got out of sequence there, so we didn't have the drum roll tonight, but that is definitely outrageous. And people, we have this event each and every week. Hey, by the way, excuse me, John, Brooke, if you would tell Mike that just give you his number, and I'll connect with him afterwards, or or tell him to hold on. And I'll take it after after we finish. Okay, back with you, John, and Government Grifter of the Week here. We see this pattern time after time, and as large and as outrageous as these salaries are, a pension will be paid on all or a part of that compensation. Sometimes these large numbers are generated by settlements or retirements, a few other things, but their underlying compensation is large. It's outrageous. And many of these people will leave the state to go to lower cost, lower tax states. I'll tell you one thing I'd like to do, a Freedom of Information Act request would be on a bunch of these cities or even on CalPERS to see how many people still live in California. Specifically, I'd like to know how many California retirees are now in Texas or Florida or Washington State or low-tax states like Idaho or Wyoming.
Well, LAPD, a lot of guys go to Hayden Lake, Idaho. I think
That's
20%
right.
of the population is Hayden Lake, Idaho, LAPD.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's
retirees.
I know. So, there are some firemen over there in San Marino, believe it or not, who live in Idaho and actually fly in from there, work here 4 days, and then head back. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they work extended shifts, overtime, the whole thing, and then head back up there. They live like royalty, man.
Well,
they are royalty.
They can afford a private plane.
Yeah, exactly. Hell, they probably have a pool. For all we know, we're paying. That's probably in the next
Are they
negotiation.
environmentalists too?
Yeah.
We
Hell
need to
yes.
cut down our greenhouse gases while traveling on private jets.
I know. So, hey, what kind of time we got here left? We got 90 seconds here. One, Tiara, thank you very much for calling in, and we'll talk to you next week.
Well, how about this for perspective?
Yeah.
100,000 people in Santa Monica. Los Angeles has 4 million. You know what the LA police chief makes?
Too much?
But $307,000 less than the Santa Monica guy.
Yeah, amazing. And what was the population of Santa Monica?
It's, I read it's less than 95,000.
Amazing.
Wow. I said 92 something, but
yeah, wow. All right. Well, that music that you're hearing in the background means that we've wrapped up another session here of Radio Free Los Angeles. Always exciting to be with you. Josh, thank you for joining us. Pleasure having you here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Brooke, and everybody here. And especially thank all of you out there. Don't forget to go to radiofreelosangeles.net or schoolchoice2020.org. Sign up there. Get connected, get committed, get others to do the same, and we'll talk to you next week, same time, same station.